So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Larry O'Brien, Vice President of Research and a member of the Cybersecurity team at ARC Advisory Group. And this is part of our ongoing series of chief executive and senior executive and really people that just are leaders in the field of automation, and in this case, cybersecurity. And this afternoon, I have with me Eric Byres. Good afternoon, Eric. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well. It's great to be here.
Good. And if you've been around the field of industrial control system cybersecurity or automation for any length of time, you've most likely heard about Eric or met Eric. Eric is one of the leaders in industrial control system cybersecurity. He is the inventor of the Tofino industrial firewall, which I believe is probably the most widely installed firewall for industrial control system applications right now. So we're happy to have you with us here today. But now you are also the CEO of a company called aDolus, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So, and my understanding is that aDolus is a little bit more involved in a key aspect of cybersecurity right now for manufacturing, which is really the supply chain, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about what is the mission of aDolus and what you guys are doing and what kind of problems are you trying to solve?
Yeah. Sure. So when I left Tofino and left Belden about 5 years ago, I was really interested in what was happening in the market. And I was watching, and it's still true today, that most of the OT security market is focused on traffic analysis. In other words, they're looking for bad behavior inside your network, and that's great. You need that. But I started to realize that there was a problem on the reputation of software and firmware before it is installed into a company's operation. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at, hey, you're about to load some software in your controller or your staff are. Do you know it came from your supplier in North Korea? And the same applies to the suppliers of these software. They need to be validating the software and firmware that they're shipping to their customers is safe, not after somebody complains about it, but before it is shipped. So this is all part of the supply chain, and think of us as sort of a preemptive security solution.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and you know, especially in the world of industrial control systems, you have so many various updates and various generations of systems and a whole mix of vendors out there. What are some of the things that you're hearing from your customers about this issue right now?
So we're talking to the vendors, particularly the chief product security officers at most of the major control systems vendors, and we're talking to them continuously. And what we're hearing is they really want to ship better, more secure software to their customers, and they care about their software, their customers. They care about their products. But what we also hear is they're hurting. They need the right tools and processes. For example, people are asking for security reports on products. Every vendor is. And so we're seeing vendors getting hammered by having to fill out like 400 forms for 400 different customers that they have. And that's just not efficient or effective for good security. So what they're looking for now is solutions that help them support their customers in a highly efficient manner. How do we make security better right across the industry for all the asset owners who are using a particular vendor's products and all vendors' products?
Yeah, that's a very complex problem as well. Now, let's talk about IT-OT convergence for a second, because this is one of the, and a lot of people, get a little touchy when you start talking about IT-OT convergence, but that is one of the topics that we're talking a lot here about, at the forum this week. And a lot of end user customers are still trying to drive this, convergence between their IT-focused organizations and their OT-focused organizations into kind of one, seamless organization that can address both, both domains. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I know there's a lot of resistance to IT-OT convergence, but it's happening. It is going to happen. On wearing a different hat, I've been involved in a very large IT-OT convergence project, and there's no question the financial drivers that are there. But it's challenging because as an industry, we're trying to blend solutions from two different worlds in a way that respects the needs and security requirements of both those worlds. In other words, you have IT requirements, IT software, we have OT software, we have OT requirements, we have and we're trying to mash that into one. So, my vision here at aDolus is we're making information about both IT and OT software. And not just vulnerabilities, but everything you need to know about it, the malware, the vulnerabilities, whether the code signing's right, whether you need software bill of materials, and put that all into one simple scoring report, regardless of what supplier it is, what subcomponents they are, who supplied those subcomponents. So you need that for IT/OT convergence because you're dealing with so many different components from so many different sources. And this is kind of like a universal credit score for software. It gives companies assurance that the software they're using for their strategy, whether it's IT, OT, or something else, is IIoT, whatever you want to call it, is safe and secure before they actually have it running.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, right? I mean, we're not just talking about software updates from proprietary control systems anymore. Like the world of ICS used to be, largely proprietary. Now we have industrial Internet of Things technologies coming in. We have edge computing based platforms and systems and so forth. So all of these updates that you have to do, all these little bits of software that you have to manage that are kind of incoming and so forth. These are coming out of multiple domains now, not just the formerly completely proprietary ICS domain anymore. And I think one of the other things you guys do that's very interesting is you're taking this very complex process, of vetting this software, and ensuring, that there's traceability and so forth. You're automating that process. I mean, that's a very labor-intensive process. Nobody has the time to do that. We're always big advocates of automating everything you can automate, not just within automation systems, but also in the realm of cybersecurity. And to me, this is a really good example of how we can automate some things very efficiently. What can you tell us a little bit about some of the key initiatives that you're planning in aDolus in the near term, and how those are going to further enhance, your value proposition and what you're doing for the end users here?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, for the end users, we're focusing on bringing in a lot more ICS vendors into the FAC community this year. The more vendors we have, the more information customers, asset owners can get on a bigger variety of software they're using. And we're also working hard to bring in even the suppliers of the operating systems into that community. The second thing is we're going to be releasing artificial intelligence tools that allow the rapid creation of what we call software bill of materials, or SBOMs. And this is really important because the asset owners, particularly if you're in the power industry and have to deal with SIP 13, are requesting these product SBOMs. It is becoming a regulatory requirement. And also not just because it's a regulatory problem, but if you don't know what third-party components are a part of the system that you just bought from a major supplier, managing your vulnerabilities in that is just about impossible. But what we're doing this year is we're making those SBOMs easy to generate. They're hard normally. A lot of vendors will balk when asked to provide them by an asset owner, and we're making it easy for the vendors to give their customers the information they need. And then the third thing we're doing is sort of tying back to what you mentioned about automation. We're building a lot of tools to understand and manage vulnerabilities in products after those products have been shipped out to the asset owners. I mean, nobody deliberately ships vulnerabilities today, but the vulnerabilities show up 1 to 10 years after the product has left development. It's deployed, and now somebody announces there's a vulnerability in OpenSSL or something, and who knows, as an asset owner, if you've got OpenSSL on that PLC? You don't know. And so managing those for the vendor and the asset owner, it's really about automating that. Just getting another PDF mailed to you is not going to help you. It's how do you aggregate that, and a lot of that is using machine learning and AI tools to manage those issues.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good idea, or a good example rather of practical, application of AI and machine learning in these types of applications. And your customers are really, in this case, they're really the industrial control system suppliers and so forth. The manufacturers are increasingly depending on their vendors to support their operations with enhanced service offerings. Can you tell us a little bit about what your company is doing in that regard from a cybersecurity perspective?
Yes. So again, you're absolutely correct. Our major customers are primarily the large suppliers of products. So, for example, we were on a call this morning with OSIsoft. They want to ship better software and they want to support their customers. Customers will call and say, how do we make sure this is really OSI software? I mean, that's just tying up the customer's time and it's really tying up their support desk. So we're giving them all the tools to help their customers validate the software they're getting. And we're giving them all the tools to help reduce the risk to their reputation. And we see that, for example, another thing that customers are wanting quite reasonably is, give a vulnerability and risk report on the package that you've just sold me. Well, that's a lot of work. And we're trying to make that absolutely easy for a vendor to be able to provide to a company and saying, here's all the packages that you've bought, here's all the components in those packages, and here's all the known vulnerabilities, and this is what we've done to address them. And it's not just, I want to be really clear, just because you're running, say, well, a package inside there like OpenSSL, that's where Heartbleed was. But just that doesn't necessarily mean the product is vulnerable. There's lots of ways to use OpenSSL that it makes it absolutely immune to Heartbleed. So you can waste as an end user an unbelievable amount of time chasing vulnerabilities that aren't vulnerable. And we're really trying to make that focus on what matters, focus on the really risky stuff, and ignore the stuff that is just paperwork.
Yeah, no, I think that plays very well into what's happening today. There's just a mountain of data, coming at the end users, and they just don't have time to filter through it all and try and make sense of it all and turn it into something that's really actionable and focus on things that, need immediate focus versus, trying to sort through this massive, array of updates and applications and everything else that's there. So I'm going to ask you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'll give you a real world example.
Yeah,
I was just talking to a client last week who ran a traditional vulnerability analysis tool against their network and got 19,000 possible vulnerabilities. They probably have two. 19,000 just stopped it. That was it. Like, what do you do with a report with 19,000 vulnerabilities? Well, sadly, you do nothing because you don't have time. So without that ability to sort the needle out of that haystack, people just freeze like deer in the headlight and nothing gets done.
How do you prioritize a list like that? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, we have a way to do that now. Yeah, so that's good.
Yeah.
So lastly, I'm going to ask you to get out your crystal ball because, so they say we live in interesting times, and I think we're both living in those interesting times right now, unfortunately. But I wanted to ask you, what do you see moving forward for the business over the next year or so? What are some of the key headwinds that we're going to face or tailwinds, if any? What's your take on that?
Well, I'm going to combine headwinds and tailwinds. It's the supply chain attacks. Especially against software. These are becoming more frequent, more dangerous. We just saw the attacks against SolarWinds, and here these attackers attack one supplier, get access to 18,000 companies. And that is just great return on investment for the bad guys. So this isn't my research. People like Sonatype specialize in this type of analysis. What are the attack vectors? They're seeing a 430% increase in the last 12 months on supply chain directed attacks. So that's not exactly a crystal ball. It's going to require, hey, where are the bad guys going? They're going after where the money is and where the impact is. And ransomware makes them money, and supply chain attacks give them coverage. So we'll probably see those two merge pretty effectively. In fact, we kind of have when we saw NotPetya, although it wasn't really money they were after. So we're going to see these supply chain attacks, and because they increase, we're going to see regulations just flying at us. We already see them in NERC SIP. We see them in the medical industry. We are seeing them in the automotive industry coming out. Understanding who's your supplier. And so people talk about third-party risk. It's third and fourth and fifth and sixth-party risks. And no matter where you are in the supply chain, whether you're way down at the bottom or you're the end user, you need a safer ecosystem to be able to run your platforms.
I totally agree. And when I first read about SolarWinds, I actually thought about you and your company because you address this very issue. As far as the security of software updates and so forth, which is, of course, how the SolarWinds malware was pushed out, was through the update process. Unfortunately, we're out of time here today, Eric. I want to thank you for joining us. Again, my name's Larry O'Brien. I'm Vice President of Research at ARC Advisory Group, and we've been talking here today to the CEO of aDolus, Eric Byres, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.